Thanks for joining us. My name is Chelsea Mack. I am the Communications Director for the Frontline, and our moderator for today's conversation is talking from the Frontline channel. And who is our host? It's a surprise.
Oh, well, hello everyone. My name is Chris Love, and I am friend of the Frontline and huge Clarkisha Kent fan. So I'm taking over the space for today.
Yes, and welcome everyone. Just to give a little background, the Frontline is a joint project of Working Families Party, the Movement for Black Lives Electoral Justice Project, United We Dream, and the Rising Majority. And we are spending our entire Black History Month this year talking about the life and legacy of Bell Hooks. We have a series of events that are happening on Wednesday evenings, and then on Thursdays at 3 p.m. all month, we are having these great conversations with some wonderful guests. And today we are going to be talking about love and entertainment. I'm mostly going to be in the background, kind of running things, but we'd love for folks to come on the stage as well as giving responses to the conversation between our host, Chris Love, and our amazing speaker, Clarkisha Kent, who is in the house. So I'm going to shut up. I'm going to turn the floor over to Chris, and we'll go ahead and get started.
All right. Thank you so much, Leslie Mack. And thanks to the Frontlines family for having me here today. Welcome to our space. As Leslie said, today is the second in a series of weekly discussions as the Frontline celebrates Black History Month by taking time to honor the life and works of one of our newest ancestors, Black visionary Bell Hooks. As I said at the top, my name is Chris Love. You can find me on these Twitter streets at Legally Love. And today I'm going to find out what Bell Hooks taught culture critic and writer Clarkisha Kent about love and entertainment. So with that, Clarkisha, I am inviting you up to the stage to introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. My name is Clarkisha Kent. I guess the quickest way I can, introduce myself to everyone is that I am a shit talker. But I'm a shit talker coming from a place where I am very invested in kind of not just uplift, but really getting people to see how deeply rooted anti-Blackness is in particularly mass media and entertainment. And obviously that hate takes different forms, like homophobia, fatphobia, whatever have you. But I've literally made it my life's work to just call that shit out, to varying degrees of success, obviously. So I guess that would be how I intro myself.
I mean, that's perfect. And I, as a fellow shit talker myself, I appreciate you. I appreciate all that you actually bring to my life as an avid consumer of entertainment. And I think I spoke this into existence last week, where I said this was the content that I was most excited about. So I'm really excited to finally have an opportunity to talk to you today. And so ground the conversation by giving you all a Bell Hooks quote. And I think this Bell Hooks quote is appropriate all day, every day, and twice on Sundays. So the quote starts, "Love is profoundly political. Our deepest revolution will come when we understand the truth." And that's from Bell Hooks in Salvation, Black People, and Love. With that, before I get started asking Clarkisha stories, I just want to encourage anyone who has any questions or comments or anything to just request to step up on the stage. I don't have to talk a whole lot. Y'all can talk some too. And with that, here's my first question, Clarkisha. When did you first become aware of Bell Hooks, and how has her work influenced your work in entertainment media?
I guess first acquaintance, I would say definitely late high school, early college, because I was making that transition away, as some people in here will empathize with, away from, church, away from that particular institution, and in the very oppressive ways that exist now. So basically I was making that transition away from all that and away from kind of like The self-hatred was breeded in my childhood home. And then in terms of how it influences my work, you posted a tweet up there that's from my other thread that kind of perfectly encapsulated everything. Once I understood that, TV, movies, whatever, TV is not just TV, movies aren't just movies, and that they're coming from whatever biases that people are writing from, right? Because people say write what you
Mhm.
know, which
Mhm.
technically is good advice, right? But if all
Mhm.
you know, right, is these biases against whoever, whether it's Black people, Asian people, Jewish people, like, but whatever specific group that you have this bias towards, it's going to find its way into your work. I don't care who you are. I also
Mhm.
don't care how smart you think you are. Um, so once that became clear to me, particularly because I went to a PWI, I went to University of Chicago, very, very white institution. And once you kind of clock um, white supremacy in the specific canon that's taught. So the canon of great so-called writers and philosophers who are 100% always white. Once you clock that, then it's not hard to then kind of take that frame and apply it to what you're seeing in media, including the images that you're consuming. So yeah.
Well, that was a great answer, and I think that's probably a common answer for most of us who are Black women in this space. That transition from, late teenagehood to early adulthood and kind of being away from home for the first time and kind of shedding a whole lot of stuff and rediscovering or figuring out who you are. And so I think that's how I came to Bell Hooks, and it's refreshing to hear that story from you as well. So we know that Belle talked so much about love in her work. Um, what is the role of love in entertainment, and is there one?
Um, Great question. I think there is a role of love. I think love is it has its role in everything. Not to be cliche sounding, but she has an actual great quote in Salvation, which I hope everyone please pick up this book when you get a chance, or wink, wink, wink. We'll find you maybe a PDF, and obviously for legal reasons, Twitter, that was a joke, but we gotta get we gotta get y'all some of this info because it's good. But in Salvation, I'm looking at it right now, page 70. She says love is especially available to us because it is a non-market value. Valuing ourselves rightly means that we understand love to be the only foundation of being that will sustain us in both times of lack and of plenty. So Bell Hooks always talked about living with a love ethic, right? And that
Mhm.
particular ethic needs to find its way in everything that you do, but particularly entertainment mass media, right?
Mhm.
Because something I learned very quickly from her is that um, mass media is so dastardly in the way in which it can particularly um, influence, build up, but also devastate anybody's self-love, right? But
Mhm.
particularly Black people, right? Because even when you're not in an environment where you have to exist in mass um with people who are kind of enacting white supremacy on you directly, right, or in your face,
Mhm.
that TV of yours, that movie, that's how it finds its way into your home. So
Mhm.
even if you were someone who never fucking left your house, that
Right.
TV is enough to do the
Mhm.
damage. So that's kind of what I learned from her. And she obviously adds the caveat of, yeah, if you have critical thinking skills, um you might be able to kind of do that counter programming yourself, right? But
Mhm.
often for those of us who maybe don't, or who haven't developed those critical thinking skills yet, particularly guess who, children, they're
Mhm.
going to be more susceptible to those images, and those images, just the quickest way to erode somebody's sense of self-love and self-worth. um So that's why I go extra hard about some of the shit I see, particularly as it pertains to colorism and texturism and featureism. Because even if you never, because you don't have to verbally say what the fuck you're doing in terms of putting somebody down. All you gotta do is show us. All you gotta do is a racist. All you gotta do is disrespect this person that looks like me on screen, and that's all you gotta do. You don't have to outwardly say that you believe this person to be inferior, but you can't show it. So that's why I'm very militant about these particular imaging, and that's why I encourage other people to do so as well. Because it's not enough to be like, oh, that thing that's happening is not true. No, you have to call it out. So that'd be my very long extended answer.
Well, I think that's a perfect answer. And the first time I came across your work was actually when I was teaching a class for a professor friend of mine about horror movies. And I came across the Kent test while I was looking at the Bedge-Tail test and some of the other, tropes that are in movies. And I think that the Kent test is a labor of love, right? A measure of what can be seen as love and entertainment with regard to representation of Black women, and that is an inclusive. Women is inclusive, right? And so I think that that's just an everyday example of how you have applied what you've learned from bell hooks into what you do now and your criticism of media. So it's I'm impressed all the time, and I kind of apply the test myself every time I watch something. And I watched over 500 movies last year, so that was a lot.
What?
Yeah, so I had a goal. I surpassed that goal, but I've been doing it a lot with horror as well because I'm a horror movie fan, and so it's been really interesting to kind of apply that test and find out where we are not truly represented, not just in numbers and diversity TN, but where we rarely see stories that reflect the fullness of Black womanhood. So I find it helpful whenever I'm watching anything, and I try to watch things through that lens now. But with that, I think it's time for me to do a little reset of the room. If you're just getting here, welcome to the Frontlines Twitter space. We are here talking with Clarkisha Kent about love and entertainment and what bell hooks taught her. My name is Chris Love, and if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please go ahead and request to jump on stage, and Leslie will let you up. So we had a discussion last week with Anoa Changa. She was here talking about love and media, right? And her experience as a movement journalist. And she brought up the essay, Love as a Practice of Freedom. And she said that was a foundational text for her in the work that she does, especially because as a movement journalist, she connects the political to bell hooks, and how looking at how we can liberate all of us as a collective act. And so a collective act. And so I'm wondering, what are a few examples of the kind of love that bell hooks talks about that appeal to you from the perspective of movies and television?
Oh, that's easy. If Bill Street could talk, oh my
Yes.
god, that
Oh,
movie,
yes.
that movie. Oh my god, it fucked me up so bad. I'm not gonna lie. I was just boohooing
Ballin', I
because
know.
it's just like the violence, and all these systems. Because this is a story about two families, right? Essentially, two Black families trying to fucking make it from day to day, and just looking at how intent white supremacist society was trying to separate them, and also how even more intense they were in trying to stay together. That made me boo the fuck who. Like, I was just crying and sobbing. Then you have I don't remember his name, Nicholas, what's his face, who did the fucking score, and I was boohooing some more.
Oh,
So,
Lord.
but that is I think my favorite example from that movie, the sub example, right, is when Coleman Domingo's character, I don't remember his name, who plays Kiki Lane's character, her father, right? when he essentially is like, okay, we got this baby on the way, we need some money. Guess what? I'm going back to the streets. Like, he doesn't even, he does not hesitate. He's like, bitch, we going back to the life of crime so I
Right.
can make sure you were fed. I do not care.
Right.
And it was so quick. He didn't hesitate. There was no hand wringing. He was just like, I am gonna go out and be a man's business and take care of my fucking family. Like, it do not matter. So it was little examples like that. And obviously there are
Mhm.
other things going on, like, Regina King's character fucking leaving the country to go,
Ah.
you know, find the person who can help exonerate her son. Like, little things like
Mhm.
that where um you're showing these black families really put in overtime to
Mhm.
protect each other, to support each other. Um yeah, it was very moving, and obviously Barry Jenkins has a very deft hand,
Right.
keen eye, so it just made the movie um even better for me, which is saying a lot because we already had James Baldwin lay the foundation. So it to me,
Mhm.
I was like, it's just mwah, mwah. So that's what I would say for sure when I think of love. That is probably the first movie in like recent history to pop into my
Right.
head.
Right. Thank you for taking me back to the dark theater that I was in, back before when we could go to the movie theater. Me being in the back row trying not to cry in public because I don't like it, but I just could not help it. That movie was just so powerful and meaningful, and right, it was just pure. It showed pure love that the black characters had for one another, right? And we don't see tons and tons of examples of that. So I think that that's a perfect example. Is there any other example that you can think of, say, that's come out while we've been in the pandemic?
But before you answer, Clarkisha, I
Mhm.
wanted to just jump in and say the other thing I remembered in watching Beale Street was, you know, the beauty of the
Yeah,
visual beauty of
Mhm.
the
yeah,
movie really, matched the nuance of black love that was being shown on screen, and not just romantic love, but also familial love, community love. We see, someone being welcomed back from being incarcerated
yep,
very in such
Mhm.
a loving manner, with such joy, even though it's so difficult and you can tell how hard of a time the character had, and so it hits so many of those buttons. I just wanted to lift up that, that's one of the things Bell talks about expanding what love means, expanding it
Mhm.
beyond just a romantic concept. And I think Beale Street was so beautiful, and Baldwin generally, but certainly Beale Street as a movie, was really great at illustrating that point that Belle always likes to make. So go ahead, Chris. I just wanted to
yeah.
mention that.
I actually
Ah.
want to add to that real quick.
Mhm.
I also think it was important that this was a like poor slash working class black families too.
Right.
Because I feel
Mhm.
like often in contemporary black entertainment, right? Um, there's the assumption that materially well off black families, right, are um who are going to be better essentially at showing that love. But Bell Hooks talks about all up and down through her work where that's not necessarily true.
Mhm.
Having material wealth or whatever is not kind of like a some sort of hint or guarantee that the standard black person is going to be loving. It's actually a propaganda talking point for
Uh-huh.
for riches to determine virtue, even though there's so many religious philosophical texts that say the opposite. So thank you, Leslie,
Right.
for bringing that up too.
Mhm. Oh, and that brings up the tweet I think that we posted earlier. I think you were talking about in the tweet. I think this is a reference to Cornell West, right? And
Mhm.
not acknowledging how the power of the Black elite and their um, holding on to these structures that are not good for Black people collectively, not their well-being, our collective well-being, but more of them holding on to this liberal idea of individualism in a way that benefits them and keeps them kind of at the top of the capitalist hierarchy, or wherever Black people can be in the capitalist hierarchy, quite frankly, because I don't think that we're at the top by any means. Um, can you expound on that just a little bit? Because I think that you made a really great connection with respect to what Bell Hooks said about, you know, money can't buy you love, right?
Yeah.
And how do you see that play itself out in entertainment, especially with, some of the entertainers that we have that are, you know, Black capitalism, TM, and, you know, I think of like Ice Cube and his plans and all that kind of stuff. What take do you have on that?
I mean, there are so many takes, right? But like,
Hmm.
if we were to just really like kind of like, but I want to say if we were to really deep it, right?
Hmm.
It's just the being rewarded for regurgitating white supremacist logic,
Hmm.
and talking points, and just slapping a black face on it. Like,
Hmm.
you know, we always, I feel like most people here, especially my black people, are going to be um familiar with the term pygmies, right? Well, you can be
Hmm.
a pygmy for white supremacy. Obviously, I don't think that's the correct verbiage for obvious reasons, but that's essentially what's happening, right? um if you jump when Chet says jump, and he'll hand you some money, so I feel like that's really, again, it's oversimplified, but that's like, if you keep that thought in your mind, um as you're kind of watching the kind of images that we see in media, it kind of makes it easier to see through everything. So
Hmm.
that's why when I see certain creators, Kenya Bears, Lena Waithe. When I see certain creators who
Cough, cough.
regurgitate this shit, and again slap a black face on it, I see them for who they are.
Hmm.
Whether or not this is their so-called personal politic does not matter, because this is what you're putting your money into. This is what you're investing into to get more money,
Hmm.
from white elites, from these studios, these networks, whatever have you. So yeah, that would be kind of like my technically short answer to that, but obviously it's a lot more from where that came from.
Oh yeah, I think we saw earlier this week, and there was an article about Jay Z's supposed investment in the NFL, and how that was supposed to bring about some kind of change within the NFL. But folks are like, well, where's the proof of that? What's happened, right? And so I think of that sort of thing because he's playing chess instead of checkers or whatever it is that he does. And I think
Lord.
about and I just think about how his evolution as an artist and a person, and how, yeah, it's just that when folks attain a certain level, they just literally, like you said, regurgitate what it is that they've seen over and over again and become pick me's for white people. I mean, I feel like pick me could be appropriate. I
Yeah.
feel like that's an appropriate term there. Um, and so we just see it every day over and over again. So I guess my next question is, how do we use bell hooks to kind of counter those kind of messages, because we're inundated with them? We can't turn on social media, or we can't turn on our televisions, or we can't turn on whatever the things that we turn on without being inundated with those messages. How in your life do you combat those, and what recommendations do you have for the rest of us?
You have to be critical of media, and what you're seeing, but also what other people are seeing. I think actually the most, that's why I actually despise stand culture. Because you're just here kissing ass and not thinking critically about what you're seeing, what you're listening to, um, and you're just accepting it at face value. And you should not be doing that, especially in this country that like exports most of these images. Right? I remember when the
Mhm.
studio system in this country, in terms of movies, was very strong. People
Mhm.
will come here, the U.S., Hollywood, to act out supposedly their wildest dreams and fantasies on the screen, right? But like, you have to know where this is coming from. America, in particular, the states, they're exporting um, their images and what they deem as fit, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why when you are making a movie, making a TV show that's kind of moving counter to that,
Ew, am I
it's
having a
hard to
technical
get funding.
difficulty? Is that
Can you hear me? Can
Ooh,
you
it
hear me?
sounds like
Well, yeah, I
it's
can hear you,
me.
Clarkisha.
Oh,
I
okay.
think
I
it
was
might
like,
be
oh,
you, Chris. Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead,
okay.
Clarkisha.
That's
But yeah,
crazy.
I mean, like, there's a reason when you're trying to make movies or TV shows that are counter to what we usually see on the screen in states in terms of white supremacist thinking. There's a reason why it's so hard to get funding, or very hard to get, distribution, or, in the example of Passing, right? But yeah, I was saying there's a reason there it's so hard to get funding or distribution when you're putting out a politic that is not invested in, like, denigrating or hating black people. I'll even give the modern, like, recent example of, like, Passing, right? Like, Passing wasn't my favorite movie, but
Mm-hmm.
watching it get completely locked out of these award discussions, like, I divested from these awards a long time ago. I
Right.
can't do it anymore with them.
Mm-hmm.
But watching it get shut out in real time by, you know, all of these institutions, even though it was, like, directed by a white woman with that
Right.
ancestry, right? It was
Mm-hmm.
like very interesting to me, right? Because there's messaging that's going on in the film, once again challenging um just messaging that would have black people hate themselves, because we're literally dealing with a
Mm-hmm.
character who decides to pass as the opposite, right?
Right.
I do not think it's coincidental that it just got basically ignored by these circuits of awards, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
no one's getting brutally murdered, technically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Technically, what's
Right.
good for ya? Technically, right? No one's getting
Right.
brutally murdered. There, no one's doing some outrageous black stereotype, like, I don't know, the sapphire
Mm-hmm.
woman, the mammy, the whoever,
Right.
the black brute. Like, there's no, like,
Mm-hmm.
super overt hateful imaging of black people being rendered, right? So it makes
Right.
complete sense to me that would be functionally ignored.
Oh yeah,
um
and I
so
think also there's that whole no redemption arc for the white characters in the
yes,
film, right?
yes, yes,
So if white people can't be redeemed, what's the point in even acknowledging it?
exactly. So I tell people, just, you have to be hypercritical. I don't care how much you like the actors in it, I don't care how much you like the director, I don't care how much you like the script. You have to be critical of the images, not just for you, but once again, for children, particularly, for people who don't possess those critical thinking skills yet, to
Mm-hmm.
understand what they're being fed. And then I guess the last thing I would say in pertains to that, um, is, don't ever assume that you cannot be influenced or brainwashed. That's how people
Mm-hmm.
get fucked up. You just
Mm-hmm.
think, I guess, you Professor X or something, nobody can mess with your mind. And that's not how any of this works, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
you just have to be hyper vigilant of what you're seeing and consuming. Because even passively, like, if I put I'll give you an example. The other day, I was not watching TV, but I was reading something. I had the TV in the background, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hours prior, I heard a series of commercials for, like, Papa John's, right? I wasn't directly watching the TV, right? I wasn't directly engaged with the TV, but I heard in the background, right? Why 6 hours later, I was like, damn, I want some pizza. Like, it's that simple. Like, I'm not even joking with y'all. Like, you don't even have to be consciously consuming something for it to take root in your brain. Even passively being there in the area can do something to your brain. That's why I tell people, never ever ever assume that you cannot be fed propaganda, because sometimes it's not even about being fed, right? It's about
Mm-hmm.
passively absorbing all this bullshit. So that's what
Ooh.
I would say to all that.
Hey. Amen to that. And it looks like we are at time. So thank you so much, Clarkisha, for having this discussion with me. And Leslie, thank you for jumping in and everyone who's attended. Clarkisha, tell everybody where they can find you and your work.
Yes, so I'm on Twitter right now. My at is at I write all day underscore. The person who has it without the underscore is they don't use it, but anyway, underscore. Um, I'm on Instagram as at Clarkisha Kent. You can also check out some info on me on my clips, and also you can reach me at www.clarkishakent.com.
All right. Thank you so much. And I just want to remind everyone that we're holding these spaces every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern, including next week when we will have special guest Bridget Todd, who's going to join us and talk about love in tech. So, with that, I'm going to end the space. Thanks for everyone. Thank you, Clarkisha. See y'all next week.